Yo, what's up, nerds? It's MTG Man. It's been a while. Life's been kind of kicking my ass, but you lose people, and sometimes the best thing you can do is just continuing doing whatever would make you happy, usually, I guess. No matter how hard things are, you just gotta push past it, and, what's been not really helping, but, Niv-Mizzet Visionary, love this guy. So today I'm going to be doing a $100 deck tech. So Niv-Mizzet Visionary, 4 blue-red, flying, you have no maximum hand size, and whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, you draw that many cards. It's a 5/5, the stats really don't matter. What does matter is that ability, right? So you deal damage, non-combat damage, to an opponent, you draw that many cards. So what this deck sets out to do is cast as many spells that can deal damage to the opponents, or just burn them out. And while we're burning, we're drawing cards. So first off, we want to ramp out to Niv-Mizzet as fast as possible. It's good to see him back in Izzet colors. I don't know how the guy with Izzet in his name was Wooburg for a while. I didn't like that. I know he was, oh, he's the living guild pack now. He took over for Jace. He's the protector of Ravnica, blah, 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 blah. I don't care. Niv-Mizzet should be Izzet. And that being said, let's just get into it. So first off, we're just going to start with the burn spells. So Conflagrate doesn't seem that great, right? It deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of targets, and you have to pay XX and a red for X. However, it's got flashback for 2 red and discard X cards. So let's say you cast this for both X's are 2 the first time, right? So it deals 2 damage to an opponent. But then when you flash back it, you can just discard your whole hand of let's say 20 cards because you have no maximum hand size and you're casting spells, and then you're going to draw a fresh 20 off of Niv-Mizzet, which I just thought was really cool, and it's going to let you cycle towards your win cons or whatever. Gut Shot, you can pay 2 life instead of paying its mana cost to just deal 1 damage to a player. So it's basically discard it, draw a card. It's basically Street Wraith, but it burns the opponent for 1. Sawblade Scamp has haste. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put an oil counter on it, and then you can tap it and remove an oil counter, and it'll deal 1 damage to each opponent. 1 damage to each opponent is drawing 3 cards, which will let you have more spells to cast. Coruscation Mage, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. 3 draws in a 4-player game. Same with Erebor Flamesmith, Firebrand Archer. It's just these ways to, draw cards, you burn your opponent, but that ends up drawing you cards off of casting spells. Flame Rift deals 4 damage to each player. Sure, you do 4 damage to yourself, however, you're also drawing 12 cards off of Niv-Mizzet. Grab the prize, discard a card, draw 2 cards. If the discarded card wasn't a land, deals 2 damage to each opponent, so then you're drawing 6 more cards. Price of Progress, who even knows? People play so many non-basic lands, this could just be a draw 20. Who knows, honestly. Sardian Avenger, the first ability we really don't care about, but whenever an artifact an opponent controls is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, Sardian Avenger deals 1 damage to that player. So it'll deal 1 damage, and with Niv-Mizzet will draw a card whenever they sacrifice a treasure, sacrifice a clue. Since we have so many of those different artifact tokens running around, this card's just going to keep getting better. Scalding Viper, whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value 3 or less, it deals 1 damage to that player. There's a lot of strong spells with mana value 3 or less, so being able to burn and draw off of it's just going to be nice. Plus, for 1 in a blue, returning target non-land permanent to its owner's hand is pretty solid. Thermo-Alchemist, another one of those burners. Acidic Soil deals 1 damage to each player for each land he or she controls. Let's just say you have Niv-Mizzet out, you drop this turn 5, because we're going to try and ramp out to Niv-Mizzet as fast as possible, right? We drop this turn 5, this deals 5 damage to each opponent because they're on their 5th land drop. We draw 15 cards. It's pretty solid. Ancient Runes, during each player's upkeep, Ancient Runes deals 1 damage to that player for each artifact he or she controls. This is going to cripple artifact decks, and even if opponents only have 1 or 2 artifacts, we're just going to keep drawing cards off of it, so it's just a really... It's a consistent draw. Descend to Avernus. At the beginning of your upkeep, put 2 descent counters on it. Then each player creates X treasures, and it deals X damage to each player. So it deals 2 damage, which is then 6 draws. And then it deals 4 damage, which is then 12 draws. Then it deals 6 damage, which is then 18 draws. If you have Niv-Mizzet out. But then again, it's also creating you treasures, so it'll help you ramp to Niv-Mizzet. Guttersnipe, another way to deal damage while casting spells. Repercussion, whenever a creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to that creature's controller. Just keep drawing cards. Sure, this is going to make it harder for you to block. However, it's just it makes the whole game a bit of a nightmare. Seismic Assault, you discard a land card and it deals 2 damage to any target. So if you have lands in hand, you can just discard the land, deal 2 damage, draw 2 more cards. If you get another land, discard a land, deal 2 damage, draw 2 cards. It'll help you get to whatever you need in the deck. Fiery Confluence, choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. You could choose deal 2 damage to each opponent 3 times and deal 6 to each, draw 18 cards. It can also just destroy artifacts or hit small creatures, so it felt pretty good. Cavalier of Flame, when it enters, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. With no maximum hand size, you could discard a whole bunch, and then when it dies, it deals X damage to each opponent, each planeswalker they control, or X the number of land cards in your graveyard. We're kind of discarding lands anyway, so it just seemed like a good option. Artless Hitotsugu, when it deals damage, you can tap it, it deals damage to each player equal to half that player's life total rounded down. If you have Niv-Mizzet out, and every player is still at 40, you tap it, you deal 20 damage to each player, you draw 60 cards. Even when this is smaller amounts, even when you're just dealing 10, dealing 5, it's still going to add up to be a lot of card draw. Prisoner's Dilemma, I just thought was fun, but at minimum, it'll draw you 12 cards. At maximum, it could just draw you like 20 something. The Roller Crusher ride is moving into damage payoffs, so if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a permanent, while there are 4 more card types among cards in your graveyard, it deals double that damage instead. Sure, you're not discarding down to hand size to get cards in the graveyard, but there are ways to discard in this deck, so I feel like this is an easy setup. Plus, the enter ability is basically just good removal. Virtue of Courage, you could burn an opponent with the adventure side, and whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, you may exile that many cards from the top of your library and play those this turn. It's basically just doing what Niv-Mizzet does, but worse. And redundancy is always good. It's going to help you get through your deck faster. Moving into draw, we just have Impulse and Windfall, which Windfall may seem like an odd choice, because you're drawing, 20 cards here, 15 cards here, but if you have a large maximum hand size, and there are ways to mill your opponents with this deck too, you could just win the game, or make it go to a draw. If you're in a bad position, sometimes making it go to a draw is the best thing you can do. An offer you can't refuse, Spell Pierce, Counterspell. We just want these cheap spells that we're going to be able to counter other spells with, because Niv-Mizzet is 6 mana. We do not want him getting removed. We can also equip him with Lightning Greaves. We have Negate, we have Swiftfoot Boots, and then Bolt Bend is just a good option. It'll cost 1 red while Niv-Mizzet's out, and it'll let you change the target of a spell, so, you could make your opponent Chaos Warp their own creature or something. Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Fellwar Stone, Fire Diamond, Izzet Signet, Mind Stone, Reckless Barbarian, you can sacrifice for 2 red mana. So if you go Reckless Barbarian turn 2, you could have Niv-Mizzet out by turn 4. Thought Vessel, Inner Fire. Once you have so many cards in hand, this could just win you the game. I mean, if you draw 20 off of, Price of Progress, and then you play Inner Fire with 20 cards in hand, yeah, 20 red mana you can do a lot with. Thran Dynamo for ramp. Moving into removal, Abrade, Chaos Warp. I wasn't really too sure how much removal this deck needs. It felt more of an explosive deck than a mid-range, ooh, I'll remove your thing, and then I'll do my thing. It just feels like you lose 10 life, I draw 20 cards, and then I play this, and then I win the game. Moving into spell payoffs, we have Third Path Iconoclast. You might as well just create some tokens to block with while you're casting spells. Fiery Inscription, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it'll deal 2 damage to each opponent, which is drawing 6 in a 4-player game. Stella Lee Wildcard, she's going to exile cards off the top of your library so you can cast more spells, plus she can copy the 3rd spell you've cast this turn. Just seemed like a good option. Ashling Flame Dancer, not losing unspent red mana seemed pretty good. Dealing 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control seemed pretty good. And yeah, it kind of does everything the deck wants, especially if you're just going to keep casting spells to burn. Stormkiln Artist is going to create you treasure when you cast your spells. Archmage of Runes is going to make your spells cost less. Plus, you can draw a card whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, so just going to keep your hand full even when Niv-Mizzet isn't there. Arcane Bombardment, kind of a win con, but just generally a good spell payoff. You know, you then exile a spell from your graveyard at random, and then you get to cast that for free. And then if you just keep casting spells, it'll eventually pay itself off. Ovika Enigma Goliath. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create X/1/1 goblins with haste. Yeah, you flood the board, you swing in, kind of an alternate win con too. Tutor-wise, we only really have Gamble, which is fine. I mean, Gamble's going to let you get whatever card you need most. Win cons, we're playing Triskaidekaphile. It also gives you no max hand size, and if you have exactly 13 cards in your hand at the beginning of your upkeep, you win the game, which is kind of interesting, because the deck does draw a shit ton of cards. So a lot of times you're probably going to be over 13, but also having no max hand size at all times, you know, because Niv-Mizzet can get destroyed, right? So having Thought Vessel and, you know, Triskaidekaphile and other cards like that, so that you get to keep your cards even if Niv-Mizzet isn't there, are just going to be helpful either way, and it could win you the game. Laboratory Maniac, yeah, we're drawing a shit ton of cards. This is pretty on par, so that you do not lose the game. You win the game, in fact. Niv-Mizzet Perun. So Niv-Mizzet Perun and Niv-Mizzet the Firemind, or Perun, or however the fuck you say it, actually go infinite with the new Niv-Mizzet. So this one says whenever you draw a card, you deal 1 damage to any target. So by drawing that card and dealing 1 damage, you then get a non-combat damage to an opponent. So then you draw another card, which triggers it, and they go infinite, dealing infinite damage, drawing infinite cards. And then the other Niv-Mizzet, same thing. Whenever you draw a card, it deals 1 damage to any target. You deal 1 damage to an opponent. That's non-combat damage. You draw a card, triggers again, and you just go infinite and win the game. Harmonic Prodigy, there's some miscellaneous cards. I wasn't really sure what category to put in. It'll double up all your wizard or shaman triggers. So any of those, whenever you cast a spell, deal 1 damage, will be copied. And I believe Niv-Mizzet himself will be copied. So you'll draw double cards. Stormcatch Monarch is just going to make your spells cost less. Psychic Corrosion, whenever you draw a card, each opponent puts the top 2 cards of their graveyard, or of their library, into their graveyard. Along with Sphinx's Tutelage, these are pretty good mill effects. If you draw 50 cards, your opponents have no cards in their library anymore. So you just mill them really fucking fast. Which, if you're milling and burning and you have Laboratory Maniac, you're going to win eventually from one of the 3. This deck just doesn't really have to choose a lane. Which I thought was just pretty solid. Veyran, Voice of Duality, I guess technically this goes in the spell payoff category. But it's also just going to copy up all of those, you know, whenever you cast a spell, deal 1 triggers, so... Psychosis Crawler. This also just doubles up any damage, so if you deal 3 damage, you then draw 3 cards, so each opponent loses 1 life. But it doesn't quite double up damage, because if you deal 3 damage to each opponent, you draw 9 cards. So they lost 3 from the spell that dealt 3 damage. Then they lose 9 from Psychosis Crawler, which is just kind of nutty overall. It's going to do a lot of work in this deck, plus it'll be really big if you have a lot of cards in hand. Moving on to lands, we have Cascade Bluffs, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard. I know a lot of people don't run Exotic Orchard in a 2-colored deck. However, what are the chances that none of your opponents are playing blue or red? There's so many Wooburg decks, there's so many other decks. This is just like a second command tower almost. Ferrous Lake, Fiery Islet, Frostboil Snarl, Islands, Mountains, Ramunap Ruins. Sacrifice it. Deals 2 damage to each opponent. Draw 6. Again, it's just another option for when you need more cards. Reliquary Tower. If Niv-Mizzet gets destroyed, again, it's going to be nice to just not have to discard down to hand size. I did build an alternate version of this deck. Sorry, I'll get to that in a second. Sulfur Falls, where it used Glinthorn. Where is it? Glinthorn Buccaneer that has whenever you discard a card, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. And then it used ways to sacrifice Niv-Mizzet so that you would draw till you had 40 cards, sacrifice Niv-Mizzet so you didn't have a max hand size, discard down to hand size, deal however much damage with Glinthorn Buccaneer. It was way too gimmicky, but I just wanted to mention it because I thought it was interesting. And then this card right here, this card right here, I just thought I would mention that you should not play because it is mean. But Thoughts of Ruin, 4 mana, each player sacrifices a land for each card in your hand. If you have 20 cards in hand, everybody's sacrificing all of their cards, right? All of their lands, so they have no more ways to cast spells. But let's be real here. This deck does a fair bit of ramp and a lot of draw, so you're definitely going to have lands in hand to recover. I just thought this was too mean. And a lot of people don't like mean cards because they're itty-bitty babies and they can't handle it. But yeah, that's about how the deck shakes out. I mean, it's definitely reliant on the commander, but when Niv-Mizzet's out, it's a solid deck. So, just playing a test hand, I actually think we would keep this, which is terrible, but Command Tower, pass. Mountain, Fellwar Stone, pass. Sulfur Falls, Psychic Corrosion, pass. They mill 2. Descend to Avernus, Ferrous Lake, pass. Descend to Avernus deals 2 damage to each player. We create 2 treasures. We tap out for Niv-Mizzet. Sure, we have no way to protect it, but that's fine. Descend to Avernus deals 4 damage to each opponent, which means that would be 12 total. We would create 4 treasures, draw 12 cards off of Niv-Mizzet, and then they would mill 24 cards from Psychic Corrosion. So let's just draw 12 cards, so we're up to 16. And then at this point, I think we would just win the game. I mean, we can Price of Progress if we need more cards. We have Lab Maniac in hand. We have a Soul Ring. We have an Arcane Signet. At this point, you basically just win, because if they can't remove Niv-Mizzet on the next turn, you are then going to deal 6 damage to each player, draw 18, then they mill 32, but they're already going to be milling more because of Price of Progress. So let's just go Soul Ring. Where is it? There it is. Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Price of Progress. They probably... I'm just going to say they probably each have about 3 non-basic lands, because that's about how much we're at. So they each take 6. We draw 18. They mill 36. Yeah, we've basically won the game. Sure, you need to protect Niv-Mizzet, and if they had some way to remove it, then I guess we would be fucked, but as you can see, Niv-Mizzet hits the board, and it's just explosive. I mean, that was a 5-land hand, yeah, we would win turn 6, turn 7, which is pretty ridiculous, especially, he's really good, honestly. I think Niv-Mizzet Visionary is probably one of my new favorite commanders. And yeah, this has been MTG Man. Maybe when life improves, I'll upload more or something, but I love y'all, all 80 of you. Peace out. Yo.